In Israel, following a meeting with his security team, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he's agreed to a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon that needs to be sent to its cabinet for approval. In Russia, the government warned on the United States' attempts to destabilize the member nations of the Community of Independent States. And in Mexico, authorities called on President-elect Donald Trump's administration to promote dialogue following the president's threats to impose radical tariffs.
He feels as good as he has for quite a while, fitness-wise.
Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from TeleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah attacked for the first time an Israeli regime military base in the occupied Syrian Golan. The Lebanese resistance confirmed a series of operations against the Israeli occupation, 10 in Lebanese territories and 11 in occupied territories. They also stated that 2 of these operations targeted bases in the occupied Syrian Golan, where Israel maintains a tank ammunition depot and a staging base for ground forces. Tel Aviv also reported that several rockets failed on the occupied Palestinian territory of Nahariya and warned that Hezbollah is expected to carry out new attacks against the area in the next 24 hours. In Israel, following a meeting with his security team, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced he's agreed to a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon that needs to be sent to its cabinet for approval. Netanyahu cited 3 main reasons for the deal on the Israeli part, namely to focus on the Iranian threat, to refresh army forces and resupply, and to disconnect the fronts and isolate the Palestinian resistance Hamas. Precisely, the Zionist Prime Minister stressed the agreement does not include a similar effort towards Gaza. In this context, it is worth highlighting that the Israeli prime military continues its onslaught in both Palestine and Lebanon, carrying air attacks on Beirut that left at least 31 people dead in the last 24 hours. As an official response from Hezbollah is awaited, Netanyahu pledged Israel will attack if the group violates the proposed truce.
Tonight, I will bring to the cabinet for approval an outline for a ceasefire in Lebanon. The duration of the ceasefire depends on what will happen in Lebanon. In full understanding with the United States, we maintain full military freedom of action. If Hezbollah violates the agreement and tries to arm itself, we will attack. If it tries to renew terrorist infrastructure near the border, we will attack.
In this context, the Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati addressed the matter after Israel's ceasefire proposal. Mikati said that the international community must enforce an immediate ceasefire. He also added that Israel has no regard for any law after targeting Beirut and other regions this same afternoon in a series of attacks that the Prime Minister described as historical. Finally, Mikati stressed that attacking the capital shows a particular hatred of Israel, as Beirut represents all Lebanese people and is home to most of the displaced population. At the United Nations, a special meeting will commemorate Palestine Day this November 26 on the eve of the anniversary of the partition resolution that stipulates in 1947 the creation of an Arab state in the still occupied territories. The meeting will recall one of the oldest debates of the organization and will become a space for solidarity after more than a year of Israeli offensive in Gaza. Since 1977, the international date highlights the need to comply with a resolution that stipulated the creation of a Jewish state and an Arab state in Palestine. Despite the decades that have passed of the 2 states contemplated in the resolution, only Israel has been created. Heavy rains and high sea waves flooded thousands of tents of displaced Palestinians west of the city of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. The torrential rains that fell during the night of Monday flooded the tents and in some places washed away the plastic and cloth shelters. Government teams on the ground reported that of the 135,000 tents, 110,000 are completely worn out and need to be replaced urgently. These heavy rains have deteriorated the humanitarian situation suffered by the thousands of displaced Palestinians, adding misery to the communities already devastated by 13 months of genocidal aggression perpetrated by Israel. The Syrian government condemns the U.S. support for Israel and Ukraine that undermines security and stability worldwide. The Syrian Ministry of Foreign Affairs condemned Washington's hostile attitude towards the Russian Federation by supplying long-range ballistic missiles to Ukraine. It also affirmed that the U.S. actions defy international laws and violate arms control agreements and treaties. Furthermore, he warned that the actions of the United States will lead the region and its surroundings to an unprecedented level of escalation and would also push the world to the risk of nuclear war, whose consequences will be faced by all the peoples of the world. The Russian government warned about the United States' attempts to destabilize the member nations of the Community of Independent States. The Russian Foreign Intelligence Service said the United States and its allies are making joint efforts to undermine the integration processes on the Eurasian continent. The intelligence service indicated that the U.S. and British intelligence agencies have set themselves the ambitious task of breaking not only political and economic ties, but also the deep historical and even geographical ties between the nations of the region. Authorities of the said agency pointed out that an example of this is their support for Ukraine, a country used by Washington as a war machine against Russia. Russia also denounced Western attempts to spark a color revolution in Georgia following the results of the parliamentary elections. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that the West continues with its efforts to increase the tensions in the conflicts in the region. The head of the Russian diplomacy also warned that Western countries, which are also members of NATO, are taking advantage of their influence on non-governmental organizations to destabilize the internal politics of Georgia. Opposition parties qualified the parliamentary election of October 26 as an alleged fraud and with them have unleashed matrices to generate scenarios of violence with the use of students, although the Central Electoral Commission certified the results of the election. In Pakistan, protesters demanding the release of former Prime Minister Imran Khan close in on the capital center. Convoys of pro-Khan demonstrators have been marching on the Islamabad since Sunday, hauling aside roadblocks and skirmishing with police and paramilitary forces, firing volleys of rubber and live ammunition and tear gas. Over 10,000 protesters were present in the city center on Tuesday afternoon, despite a ban on gatherings. Khan was barred from standing in February elections that were marred by allegations of rigging. His Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party has defied a government crackdown, with regular rallies being Tuesdays the largest in the capital since his imprisonment in August 2023. Government authorities said 4 members of the nation's security forces have died in clashes with protesters. In Japan, the second test of a new solid-fuel rocket failed to an anomaly that caused the rocket to burn. The failed test of the Epsilon S rocket was supposed to last approximately 120 seconds. Local police and firefighters reported that the incident did not cause any injuries. The error that led to the fire, and whose cause is still unknown, occurred in the second stage of the rocket. This is not the first unsuccessful test. Back in July 2023, the Epsilon S rocket exploded seconds after ignition. Tuesday's tests began at 8:30 a.m. local time at the Tanegashima Space Center in the south of the country. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok, where you can find different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Indonesia, rescue workers used heavy equipment on Tuesday to dig out from weekend flooding and landslides that have killed at least 20 people. Beginning Saturday, heavy rain pounded 4 districts across northern Sumatra, producing the deadly floods and landslides. Disaster chef in Hardest Head Karo district, Juspri Nadek, said the discovery of victims not yet reported missing to the authorities remained a possibility. Rescue and recovery efforts are hindered by the lack of electricity and cell phone reception. Indonesia has suffered a string of recent extreme weather events, which experts say are made more likely by climate change. In May, at least 67 people died after a mixture of ash, sand, and pebbles carried down from the eruption of Mount Marapi in West Sumatra.
Approximately 10 people were reported missing in this village. We began the evacuation efforts on Sunday, where we found 4 victims. On Monday, we discovered 5 more, leaving just 1 person unaccounted for. Currently, our focus is on assisting the affected community. We've set up an evacuation post in Semangat Gunung village.
Brazilian meteorological authorities warned of high temperatures in the Amazon region, adding that they could reach 5.1 degrees Celsius above normal for this time of year. The National Institute of Meteorology reported that the heat wave is an anomaly influenced by the global climate crisis and regional factors due to deforestation. It also warned that another phenomenon is expected at the end of this year in the region that could have a mitigating impact on the temperature called La Niña, which could possibly cause a cooling of the Pacific Ocean and an increase in rainfall in the Amazon region. On the other hand, authorities warn people to protect themselves with clothes that cover the whole body, as well as sunblock, and to keep hydrated. In Nicaragua, the National Assembly passed a law against the imposition of foreign sanctions that violate international law. The bill proposed by the presidency is titled Protection of Nicaraguans Against External Sanctions and Aggressions. It imposes penalties on those entities that implement these coercive measures against the country. With its approval, no entity or person in the country may deny or suspend services to natural and legal individuals, private entities, and state institutions. For his part, legislator Filiberto Rodriguez rejected the interfering actions of foreign governments and invited the Nicaraguan people to comply with and enforce this law with all the legal instruments at their disposal. The government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela rejected in an official communique the G7 statement on the Venezuelan electoral and political process. The communique reads as follows: The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela categorically rejects the absurd statement on the Venezuelan electoral and political process issued by the G7, a group of powers that insists on believing itself to be the arbiter of global democracy while covering up its own political, economic, and moral failures, supporting genocides, and stimulating the spread of Nazi and fascist ideology in Europe and the world. The document also states, it is particularly ironic that these same countries, which greatly embarrassed themselves in 2019 by recognizing an impostor as interim president, now pretend to give lessons on popular will and electoral processes. They are trying from the colonialist and imperialist complex to prepare the ground to disregard the institutions and decisions of the Venezuelan people with the fantasy of a Guaido 2.0 that will again crash against the dignity of the heirs of Simon Bolivar. In addition, it reads, "We warn the G7 countries that this arrogant and interfering attitude will not go unchallenged. Venezuela will proceed to thoroughly review its relations with each of the governments that make up this group because respect for national sovereignty is non-negotiable." Finally, it concludes, "History has already shown that the Bolivarian people will not accept any more tutelage. Venezuela is free and will continue to be so, no matter how much it hurts to those who have not overcome their imperial compulsions." We have a second short break coming up, but first, we invite you to follow our YouTube channel at TeleSUR English. There you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, now go away. Welcome back to From the South. In Mexico, authorities called on President-elect Donald Trump's administration to promote dialogue following the president's threats to impose tariffs against the neighboring country. In her morning press conference, President Claudia Sheinbaum responded to Donald Trump and announced that she will send a letter to establish a dialogue and discuss the tariffs he's seeking to apply to Mexico. The president also pointed out that this measure could have a negative effect on the U.S. economy, so on Wednesday she will receive businessmen who will evaluate the situation. The initiative takes place after Donald Trump informed that he will charge tariffs of 25% on all products coming not only from Mexico but also from Canada.
We are going to send this letter today. As you can see, we are proposing a dialogue with President Trump's team. Tomorrow, a council of businessmen that we have been forming for some time, coordinated by Altagracia Gomez and the Secretary of Economy Marcelo Ebrard. Because first, we are going to show what the increase in tariffs would mean for the United States, the impact that the United States economy would experience if tariffs are increased.
The United Nations warns that humanitarian agencies lack funds to deal with the consequences of Haiti's violence crisis, which disproportionately impacts women and girls. The United Nations reported that from January to October this year, Haiti registered nearly 5,400 cases of gender-based violence. United Nations Secretary General Representative Stéphane Dujarric stated that services against gender violence and sexual abuse are seriously underfunded and that the agency's population fund has obtained only 19% of the necessary funding. They point out that at least 2,000 people have left their homes due to the resurgence of violence in the country. In Santiago de Chile, thousands of women gathered on Monday at Alameda Avenue to celebrate International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, marching peacefully and without incidents. The Chilean Network Against Violence Against Women, one of the entities that have made the call through a communique, expressed that there are serious allegations against public and powerful individuals accused of violence and sexual abuse after the alleged rape perpetrated by the former Undersecretary of Interior Manuel Monsalve. The progressive government of President Gabriel Boric was criticized for not acting immediately and dismissing the undersecretary. Let's remember that the president, since he took office in 2022, defined himself as a feminist government. At this moment, we will back to the situation in the Middle East as the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has taken to X to address the ceasefire negotiations underway. In this regard, he stated, "Today, I have good news to report from the Middle East. I have spoken to the Prime Ministers of Lebanon and Israel, and I am pleased to announce They both have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. We will continue updating on this topic in upcoming news briefs. And with this information, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.